Hi, everyone. Welcome to week three. This week has a lot to do with an expansion on what we spoke about in week two. And it's a relationship of extremism in society and understanding why individuals may become extreme as a result of elements or events that occur within society. One of the things that we're going to talk about this week is the concept of multiculturalism. We live in a society today that encourages diversity, that encourages multiculturalism, it encourages acceptance in the opening of our arms in trying to understand and build empathy for each individual within our society and those individuals outside of our society. What we fail to understand is that there is a fear that exists within our society and in every society of change. I use this in the example of building the wall by President Donald Trump as an example of this fear of change. And what we really don't recognize is that extremism, in its very root, is conservatism, and it's this. We don't really want to change. We have a hard time with change. We look at the events in our lives as this is static, this is comfortable, and if you force me to do something that I don't like to do or that I don't agree with, then I may lash back. So when we use the example of building the wall, we speak of the Mexican population, the Mexican citizens that are coming over the border, as different. We look at them as that their culture is different, their language is different. They're not really that far different from us. They just speak a different language and have a different culture. But the fear is that these individuals are going to come into this country and change it. People don't see that as a positive, that fall into that mindset. They see this as that their way of life is going to change. Whereas if we compare it to not building a wall on the Canadian border, we have Caucasians that possibly could be coming over. Their culture is very similar. Their language, unless you're coming from Quebec, is English. So the fear of change from Canadians coming into the United States is far less than if Mexicans were coming in from the southern border. This is that fear that we have to understand, that it's not just based on racism. It's not based on a lack of understanding. It's really based on the fear that my life is going to change. So when I propose the question for this week for your individual assignment, does multiculturalism encourage extremism? We have to look at the fact is that fear may be a cause that extremism exists. The fear of the unknown, the fear of acceptance, the fear of someone or a government or an entity forcing me to change my way of life. So when you put together or compose your paper, I ask you to look at these factors just outside of the course. Try to relate it to an event that you might be hearing about in the news. It's really important that we look at extremism and the causes for extremism as in a holistic way, and it's not just limited to your location. It's not limited to your state. It's not limited to the region of the country that you live in. Try to look at multiculturalism and the forced diversity that some perceive as a negative thing, and then relate it to extremism. It's truly important that we understand that there is fear out there, and that fear can manifest into extremism. At the same time, how do we find methods, policies, procedures, ideas? How do we bring people to the table that do have these fears to let them know that these types of changes are acceptable, these types of changes are encouraged, these types of changes are needed as a growing society, as an interconnected community, an international community it's kind of dependent upon each other now. These changes are necessary and needed and should be welcomed. But how do we encourage that? How do we express that? How do we make people understand that that this concept of multiculturalism has been in existence for generations, specifically here in this country. I hope that you get some great ideas and understanding out of this week. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me.